Something goofy.
Filthy Casuals. What's up, everybody, and welcome to 3VO, where we're all on the same team. I'm your host for today, Jordan.
And I'm your other host, Brendan.
And if you're new here, we are just two big old nerds that love video games so much that we can't shut up about it. So if you have that same annoying enthusiasm for video games that we do, this is definitely the place for you. Today's a Filthy Casual episode, but we'll get into that in a second here, because first of all, Brendan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing good. Same old, kind of, honestly. I'm just working on my show, choreographing for Alice by Heart. I've got another show lined up for January, which I think we talked about now.
I think a little bit,
maybe. I don't know if we talked about it on the show, but yeah, I'm slated to choreograph for another show at another college in the spring. Very excited about that. So yeah.
Still just like every time you talk about it, we talk about it a lot, but I'm just excited for you every single time because it's just like having somebody that I know who is like consistently working in some way within the art form that they love to work in is just like gratifying as hell as your friend.
Thank you so much. Getting paid for it pretty sweet too.
It's also very yeah. Don't get me wrong. It's
big
just like
step up.
It's a big step up from just being like, sure, I'll come do that, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll feed me pizza? All right, sweet, let's go.
Pretty much, yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a lot of work lately.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like work and side work stuff a little bit because just to do a little peek behind the curtains here for we're putting together me and my friend Justin putting together a one shot for you, some of our other friends for a Halloween thing that we're doing. We're basing it off of Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies.
I'm super stoked.
Which are behind the camera person Caitlin did not know was a thing until a few days ago. Fully thought
just
that
call her out.
oh yeah, 100%. I was going to talk about this immediately on the show as soon as I could, because I realized it's kind of a sweet compliment too, in a way. Like it makes sense that somebody, if you knew me and our friend Jess, who nobody on the show has ever met before, knowing the both of us, you could kind of see how you'd be like, oh yeah, you two would just mind meld and put together Pride and Prejudice.
You would
and
create
Zombies.
that out of nothing,
and that would be
right.
Something that the two of you would like think of, but. Yeah, no, it's been really cool. It's the first time I have fully homebrewed like any kind of a D&D thing by myself.
It's different.
It's totally different.
Yeah.
But also freeing in a way because I'm not bogged down by any of the stuff that's like already in a module. You know what I mean?
Good.
I get to just have like free
cool.
reign to it.
Yeah.
But I have something of a template. Because it's a world that exists and it's something I'm somewhat familiar with. So
Sure.
I'm not like making it up from scratch.
There's like parameters.
Exactly. Yeah. I need boundaries.
Yeah, I don't do too well when it's like, well, you can do whatever you want. I'm like it's too much.
I know. I'm like, please give me notes. I need something to go off of,
Give me
please.
boundaries, please.
Yeah. What's the tone? What's the theme? Like, at least give me something there. Other than that, though, video game wise, found out that the Dead Space remake was free for my PlayStation Plus accounts. Ooh. Do I already have the remake on my Xbox? Yes. Have I already played it 1,000 times on the Xbox? Abso-fucking-lutely. Did I 100% download it again on the PS5 and I'm in the middle of playing it again just because I'm with the trophies for it? You bet your sweet ass I
Yeah.
But it's also like seeing, I love my Xbox so much, but just seeing the graphical difference between the two things now on the PS5, I'm just like, oh, I didn't realize this game could get prettier than it was. Which is weird to say about a survival horror game, but like, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
like,
I do.
In terms of, yeah. So that's what I've been doing, as it is, spooky month right now. Figured survival horror game would be the way to go.
Very nice. I am not doing anything spooky.
Okay.
In the world of video games, unfortunately. I've been playing, so that MMO that I talked about last time, Garrett and I have been playing through that. We've been playing Throne and Liberty. Pretty fun. We're having a good time. We also just finished, not too long ago, a Pokemon Emerald randomizer.
Yes, that's right. You talked about this.
Nuzlocke type thing.
Yes, you talked about this last time.
A lot of nouns. And we got through that, and we're kind of feeling not satisfied by the end of it.
Okay.
For a variety of reasons. But I just picked up a copy of Pokemon Sun not too long ago, and that goes along with my copy of Pokemon Moon that I already have. So we're playing through Sun and Moon together, and Pokemon Sun and Moon are, in my opinion, two of the best Pokemon games. They're so freaking good.
Okay, cool.
So we're playing through that. And he's just playing it casually because he's never played Pokemon Sun or Moon.
Oh, okay.
So he's just experiencing it for the first time casually. Right. I'm playing it as a Nuzlocke, and it is difficult.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah. It's hard. So you kind of know roughly the way that Nuzlocks work in Pokemon. We've kind of talked about it.
We talked about it last time, too.
You have
a certain set of, like...
knowledge. Yeah. It's difficult because in the Nuzlocke with the rules that I'm playing with, there's level capping. Basically, you can't over-level your Pokemon and make them super, super, super strong so that you can just walk through whatever you want to.
I'm out.
Right. Okay. Okay. Pokemon.
Yes.
Start at level 1.
Okay, yes.
And can go up to level 100.
Yes, this I do remember.
Okay, and as they level up, they get stronger.
Yes.
So if I throw out a level 50 Charizard, that's going to chomp down on a level 5 whatever it is. Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're with me so far?
Yep, yes.
Okay, great.
So far, you were just describing how leveling up in video games in general works.
Okay, well, good. So there's benchmarks in the game, like battles that you have to do against certain, like, named characters in the game, etc., etc. And in a Nuzlocke, depending on the rule set that you're using, the rule is, okay, you can't level your Pokemon above the best Pokemon that they have on their team at this point. So once you beat them, then the level cap goes up and you can level up your Pokemon more. But what it means is that you're always at or just below the level of the Pokemon that you're fighting.
Right,
So it makes it really difficult and really stressful if you're trying not to lose any Pokemon, because as you and all the listeners know, I'm sure, once you lose a Pokemon, it faints in a Nuzlocke. You're supposed to box it. You can't use it anymore.
Gone completely. Yeah, that's right. I remember this.
So I just picked it up and I started playing through, and I got through like the first challenge fine. I got to the second challenge, and the battler like took out all but 2 of my Pokemon. So I need to start over. It was pretty bad. It was a wipeout.
There's something I do love about like gaming culture though, in that it's like, there's this, developers have always like tried to like find ways to be like, well, how do we keep people playing past just like the normal campaign or just like the base multiplayer and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of these Pokemon games came out 10 plus something fucking years ago.
Yeah, a long time.
And players have just found their own way to keep making them interesting and just like keep wanting to come back and playing them, which to me always kind of speaks to the effort of just like, hey man, just make a good fucking game that your players will want to find an excuse to want to come back and keep playing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Definitely. Very that.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing.
Nice. Love that. Well, now that all that's out of the way, let's get on with the show. Today is one of our Filthy Casual episodes. For those who don't know, it's a lot more relaxed, a bit more kickback. It's more of a general discussion of things rather than a deep dive into one single topic. And today, since it's the spooky month, at least as of the time of the recording of this episode, I figured it'd be fun to go and talk about some of our favorite villains in video games. Doesn't have to be specifically horror games or anything like that, just sort of like a general discussion. But I thought, villains would kind of be in theme for the time that we're in right now. But before we get to our personal favorites, Brendan, I just want to know, for you, what makes a great villain, especially for a video game? Because I feel like it can be different for a game than like a book or a movie.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I have a different philosophy, because I think that it can be boiled down to one thing. So let me get there.
Yeah.
So, because a lot of different villains are very different but memorable and iconic in their own different ways. So I don't know that there's like one sort of quality or qualities that like make a good villain, except for this. I think a good villain now I can't put words to it. Great.
Well, okay, you're fine.
I think that what makes a villain memorable is how they make you feel.
Ooh, okay.
That's what I was trying to get to. So like, for a lot of the villains that are going to be on this list, we know exactly what it feels like when we're, like, running into that villain.
Right.
Even some of the, like, cheesier villains.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, a villain can be, like, not menacing, but still memorable.
Oh, yeah.
This is a very nebulous thing. I'm getting very, I feel like I'm getting distracted, or, like, I'm all over the place. But what it boils down to, I think, is, like, it's a reliable feeling that you have from that character, and it makes you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
I guess.
I was gonna say, like, to me, my example for that outside of video games, but my my thing would be like the effect of like the Darth Vader kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like the moment you see, they don't have to say anything or do anything. The moment you see them, trouble's coming. Like you know it's gonna get bad.
Yeah, and it's that feeling. It's like, okay, thank you. You put better words to it than
I did. No,
you really did.
You said it, and I just pulled out an example in order to to help.
Thank you.
To help clarify. That's
floundering
all.
there.
You were doing fine. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so just like the feeling that comes with the villain whenever.
Yeah, because like you could point to a lot of qualities, like it's like they have to have like a dark voice, or like they have to be like menacing, or you have to be scared of them. Like, I think all of those can make a great villain.
Yeah.
But I think what it boils down to is how that character in that representation makes you feel.
For sure. But because I think, to use your example, too, of what you were saying with, like, not necessarily, it doesn't always have to be menacing. Because there are villains in stories that when they show up, you're just like, fuck. Like,
Yeah,
not necessarily because like they're terrifying or scary, but you're just like, well, this is now going to be a problem for everybody. Here we go.
Yeah.
Cool, great, love this. Yeah, I get that.
I mean, like, so we're not on my list yet, but like one of them that I have on my list is like Bowser from the Mario franchise.
Yes, that's a great one.
An iconic villain, but like you're not scared of him.
It is interesting to think about that because, like, on paper, if you found somebody who didn't know Mario at all and just didn't know about it, and you just described like this giant dinosaur turtle creature, that has just like keeps kidnapping this one woman, and you're just a little plumber guy who has to go fight him. That's horrifying.
Yeah,
it's terrifying actually when you think about it. But yeah, there is something, maybe just because of the nature of the Mario games themselves.
Yeah,
it is very. Cute is the wrong word.
No, but like Bowser's kind of a bit of a doof.
A little bit of a doof. Yeah.
So like, you're never scared of him, but he is iconic, and I think I think it's a different feeling than you feel with like Darth Vader. But it is a feeling, and you know how you feel like when Bowser shows up. It's like an eye roll kind of feeling, you know? It's like, here he is again.
Like, especially now, it definitely is like, here we go again.
Exactly.
Like, dude's just at it again, I guess, just won't leave it alone.
So, well, with that, why don't we dive into some of these villains? You've picked some really good ones.
So, I didn't even look at your list yet, actually. So, I'm interested to see. All right, we want to start with me then?
Yeah, go for it. Your first one is, I think, on a lot of people's lists.
Yeah, my first one goes back a little bit. It is Psycho Mantis from the first Metal Gear Solid game. Not the first Metal Gear game, because I think there were like 2 or 3 Metal Gear games that came before that were like side-scroller stealth games.
Oh.
Going way back to the SNES days, I believe.
Let's fact check. You talk.
I know there were little games that came before Metal Gear Solid. But I don't remember if they were even Kojima titles or not. But yeah. So for anybody who may not be in the know, there's a game called Metal Gear Solid. It's pretty famous. It's kind of what made the name for a gentleman by the name of Hideo Kojima. Who was a game writer, director, developer, like kind of like, you know, sort of all the above in a way. Mostly got known for making this game series called Metal Gear Solid. First one in the series, first one in this part of the series. It's one of those ones again where it's like it's sort of like me describing the Resident Evil timeline again, but but in each one it feels like it's such a weird deep dive into it. Basically, in Metal Gear Solid, you play a character named Solid Snake, who has been tasked through this sort of like Black Ops operation to go in and infiltrate this terrorist cell that is amassing weapons of mass destruction known as the Metal Gears. These are basically like take a tank but make it be able to walk. Also, sometimes it can fly, but it also may or may not have nuclear capabilities as well. Wild, crazy shit. The whole series is sort of like is sort of a commentary on the industrial military complex and in governments and outside governments as well. It's a whole fucking thing. One of the most notable villains not the main villain of the story, but one of the notable villains of the story is a person by the name of Psycho Mantis. The cool thing with Metal Gear Solid, and I love this because I don't know if anybody's picked up on this in the show or not yet, I really appreciate clashing energies, like things that shouldn't go together. And while Kojima likes to write these long pseudo-scientific explanations for all of his shit, there's always like a weird supernatural element to some of the stuff in his games too. Psycho Mantis is a character that can read minds, use psychic abilities, control people with his mind.
Right. It's like a little dash of Resident Evil, I feel.
A little bit. Yeah. It kind of gives it that feel. It's definitely a part of the game that feels more horror.
Yeah.
When you kind of like enter his domain, part of the game and whatnot, and have to deal with him and stuff. It's a little bit more creepy. So yeah, I would agree with that too. But I picked it because, like, one, the character itself is great. He's creepy and weird. If I remember the description of him right, he's kind of like clad in like, it looks like dark leather, basically, like strapped down. He's wearing a gas mask with like red for the eyes. Like and he's like bald on top. Very creepy look, has a great voice to him. But it was sort of an early example of, for me, of being like, well, what does like meta narrative mean for a video game? Because before it had always been established that like in video games, like it's faded out now for the sake of like trying to make it feel more immersive. But, you know, early Zelda games are an example of when, like, you'd be talking to an NPC and they have to give you a clear directive of, like, here's how you do this part in the game. Just be like, you must go to the castle and blah, 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 blah. Uh-huh. Press A to da-da-da-da-da. And they just, like, jump into, like, just basically just like a tutorial for you. Mm-hmm. Similarly with Metal Gear Solid, that has that element to it. But they played with stuff. When they played with some other stuff, Psycho Mantis is the best example for me because in your encounter with him, it starts off with him monologuing at you, and one of the things he can do, just like, this is going to make both of us be old to our audiences here. Way back in the day, if you wanted to save your data on your game console, you had to buy this thing called a memory card and plug it in and put it into the console, and that's how you saved your data. And it was a fun thing where Psycho Mantis would read your memory card, like psychically with his mind, and tell you what games you were playing. Right. Now that sounds goofy and weird, but as a kid, you're like,
that's freaky.
How the fuck did you do that?
That's freaky deaky. Yeah.
There was also a goofy. I think I don't remember if this was in the remake or it was in the original, but there was also a thing where he was just like, "Let me show you my psychic powers. Put your controller on the floor. Now watch me move it with my mind," and it would just activate the vibrate function for it.
Stupid. That's cheesy.
It is cheesy.
That's cheesy.
Hideo Kojima, a huge fucking cheese ball as well. Yeah. No denying it. But when you actually get into the fight with him, you realize that your controls just like aren't working, and you're just like you can make your character move and do things, but like everything's backwards and flipped and whatnot.
Weird, yeah.
And you could either try to learn to deal with it, or through like little to no clues in the game. I think there's a way to like call somebody on the radio or something like that, but like almost no clues. Mm-hmm. You can figure out that if you unplug your, because all controllers also used to have cords to them. You could unplug your controller, plug it into the player 2 slot, and that's how you would actually like be able to use normal controls. And I think it would make you like flop back and forth at times in the fight too.
Metal Gear Solid was a long time ago.
It was ages
on the
ago.
PlayStation Uno.
Yes.
So like that was a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. To answer your question about the timeline, Hideo Kojima did design the original Metal Gear.
He did.
Original
okay.
game.
Cool.
Then separately, there was a sequel that Konami produced called Snake's Revenge. Konami produced it without Kojima.
Got it.
And then Kojima began development for Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, which was released in Japan in 1990. And then following the completion of that, Kojima then worked on the third Metal Gear game, which is Metal Gear Solid.
Got you. Okay, cool.
So there was like the real Metal Gear, and then Snake's Revenge, which was a sequel that Kojima did not work on.
Yeah.
And then Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake.
Okay.
So there were two, like, quote-unquote legitimate Metal Gear games, I guess. Yeah. And then Metal Gear Solid, which is like third, technically.
Oh, damn. So then there's in the timeline, then there's actually 2 different Metal Gear games that have, within the series, that have happened without Kojima's involvement.
Oh, what's the other one?
Well, Metal Gear, I think it was the 5th Metal Gear Solid. Well, he was involved at the beginning, but then left the project partway through.
Oh, I see.
It was a whole fucking
It was a whole thing.
I don't remember if it was because they wanted to go with different voice actors. It was something with that. Like, they wanted to change up the cast for it. Because that one doesn't have the original voice cast for the game. It has, like, Kiefer Sutherland and some other random people. And Troy Baker, which is cool, but, like, yeah. It's a little odd. But yeah, just wanted to have at least one from sort of like back in the day kind of thing. It's like when what was also like there have definitely been other ones before Metal Gear Solid, but like for me that was like that in Final Fantasy at the time was sort of like my cue into being like, oh, this can be a little bit more than just like a Bowser or like something kind of in that ilk, you know what I mean? A little bit more serious, a little bit more like genuinely like scary, like kind of a villain. And I'm just like, oh, this is like messed up. Okay, interesting, cool. Yeah, that's first on my list. Yeah. Who do we have for you?
So I got to come out swinging with Ganon, obviously.
Got to represent. Let's go.
Got to talk about the Legend of Zelda villain. So here's the thing: Ganon appears in like many different iterations, of course, many different reincarnations, as we know because of the Zelda timeline. So some, like, not all Ganons are created equal in terms of like memorability and villainy. I would say.
Yeah.
So like the Ganon that I'm putting out there is the Ganon specifically from Twilight Princess.
Interesting.
There's a couple of reasons for this. The biggest reason is that Ganon's kind of not the villain for the majority of the story, actually. You're fighting Zant, who's presented to be, like, the main bad guy, and he's, like, goofy. Like, he tries to be serious, and, like, for the first part of the game, you're like, okay, yeah, this is a serious villain, whatever, but then when you actually start fighting him, he, like, makes weird sounds, and he, like, kind of acts erratically, and you're just like, who the fuck is this? And it's not too long after he starts acting real goofy that it's revealed that Ganon is actually, like, controlling him, and that Ganon is really the big bad guy.
Yeah.
And as a Zelda player, you're sitting there like, okay, this, you know, one moment, oh, this like lame villain, whatever, I'm gonna kill him, and then the game will be beaten, and then you're like, oh my god, it's actually Ganon, oh my god, you know, and so I think that kind of entrance for a villain into a game is really iconic, and then of course it's Ganon, so like obviously like, whoa. And then he transforms into a huge beast that you have to fight in Hyrule Field. It's a really iconic fight. Zelda helps you, shoots light arrows at him. It's the whole like bow on the gift, you know, it like wraps it all up, and it's like, so it's like a super good payoff and a cool entrance. So,
and I feel like especially for something like Zelda, that works really well too, because I did play, I never beat it. I ended up watching a Game Grumps like playthrough of the whole game because I want to know. But way back when I had was the Wii. Yeah, when I had a Wii back in the day, I did start playing Twilight Princess, and even with my limited knowledge of Zelda, even I understood. I was just like, this is a little bit of a departure from how a Zelda game normally goes, because even just like the mechanic of becoming the wolf and stuff like that felt very, very different. And then also even I was able to recognize like, oh, there is the big baddie Ganon's not here yet. And it doesn't seem like he's the one doing anything, but then having the introduction of him at the end, and then kind of going into like, you know, like you said, like sort of like classic fight, like with Ganon, with Zelda, with you shooting the light arrows. It's like, it's an interesting thing to sort of like depart, but then at the very end sort of like swerve back and return to formula.
Yeah.
Is really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Twilight Princess was definitely a more mature Zelda title, for sure. Still is. Probably one of the more mature titles.
I'd agree with that.
I would say.
Yeah. Has like a darker theme than what you normally get with a Zelda game. Like I'd say that and like Majora's Mask have like the more like darker tones and themes to them in a way.
Definitely. But yeah, so for that reason, Ganon is my first entry, particularly Twilight Princess.
There you go.
Yeah.
Love
so good. What you got?
My next on the list, and okay. I need the internet to fucking settle down for a second.
You know that they
while
won't.
I talk about this.
You know that they won't.
Keep it down, guys.
You're gonna froth at the mouth as soon as you say it.
As soon as I bring it back up, it's gonna cause fucking...
I know.
I would like to talk semi-seriously about a villain in Resident Evil 8 Village, Lady Dimitrescu. Fucking calm down.
Yeah.
Immediately calm down. Because I can't pretend like I don't get it. All right, I'm not gonna act like I don't get it.
Can you describe Lady Dimitrescu for those of us who maybe aren't familiar? I'm familiar.
Yeah, yeah, I could do it pretty simply. Lady Dimitrescu is about I used to actually know exactly how tall she was. About like a 9.5 foot tall, regally dressed vampire lady. Is sort of the best way to kind of put it out.
Big lady.
Big lady. Caused a whole fucking kerfuffle on the internet when this game first came out, where everybody, including Markiplier, were losing their shit. Remember watching people lose it when he did his reaction to the trailer, and he was describing just like how much he wanted her to step on him, and people were like, this isn't the Markiplier I'm used to.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but the reason why I want to talk about her is a few things. One, her section in Resident Evil 8 is probably one of my favorite parts of the game. The game kind of does this cool thing where it's like it kind of like takes you through like it's different sections of the game you have to get through, and each one, it's not that like it's a completely different mechanic or different game in each part, but each one has kind of like a different feel for how you have to get through and end up being the boss. Like it all ends up in like a big
kind of different gimmicks and stuff.
Kind of different gimmicks too. Yeah, like this one, it's looking for things in a castle, but the whole time she's chasing you around. The next section, you lose all your weapons. You have to solve a puzzle while this weird creature is also kind of chasing you. This weird creature is like shows up, and it's like a maze kind of a thing.
Okay.
Next one's a big like shoot 'em up section and whatnot. But it's like it's all done to kind of like give every like villain their own feel for how you have to get through like their domain and stuff like that. Mechanically speaking, Lady Dimitrescu is interesting because as soon as you like are introduced to her in her castle, you're in her house. She can just show up anywhere, anytime, following you around, always wandering the castle. The AI itself is like kind of on different paths. Like I've played through the game like 6 or 7 different times now. Wow. And each time I've gone through just that part of it, it goes a little bit differently almost every single time I go through it. And she's also, until you get to the fight with her at the end, unkillable, unstoppable, which creates a very, very cool, tense mechanic for that part too, because it's just like, oh, this person's always after me and it's never gonna stop, no matter what. Very akin to Mr. X in Resident Evil 2, which does lead me to my other points of why I think...
Or 2 Chainz in Outlast. 2 Chainz, remember? The guy with the chains? No.
What?
Cut this.
No, don't cut this. Don't cut this.
Remember when we were playing through Outlast and I called the big guy that follows you? He's got the chains wrapped around him.
The really big guy who calls you a little pig?
Yes,
that's why you did call him 2 Chainz.
We could cut all of this.
I apologize for forgetting about that. But that type of character is sort of a staple in the Resident Evil series. In the first one, you have the Tyrant, which is a very large, like humanoid creature with a big claw hand to it. 2, you have Mr. X, of course, with the hat and like the trench coat and whatnot. 3, it's the Nemesis, which is another big humanoid creature, but that one has a rocket launcher and a machine gun.
Jesus.
Yeah. 4, I forget the guy's name, but there's a big dude with a beard who also has a very similar like vibe and mechanic to it. Like the large humanoid-esque creature that is constantly dogging you and going after you and trying to kill you is a staple in Resident Evil, and at least in the mainstay titles, I don't think they're until 8. I don't think there had been one that was in any way female coded at all. So that to me is like, I feel like that didn't get talked about enough. It's like we've seen this type of character in Resident Evil before. We just hadn't seen a gender swap like this. So and it just even with like all the jokes aside about like how much people were obsessed with her and whatnot, like I immediately caught on to just being like, that's a really interesting take for like this kind of archetype for it. She's also just a great character. I think her voice, I forget her voice actress's name, and she was so freaking good in it. Just absolutely freaking crushes it. Kind of gives it this almost like it's the wrong tone, but it's like the only way that I could describe it is almost kind of like Shakespearean style, like old school Shakespearean style of Maggie Robertson. Thank you very much. This sort of like old school, like Shakespearean kind of like almost like old film, like kind of style of acting to it. Like it's all very posy and dramatic and things like that. It's really, really, and it's one of those things that like this could work, or it could just be really, really fucking goofy and just like not come across right at all in the game. You know what I mean? But just for me, knocks it out of the park. It's a great performance. It's a great villain. And again, just one of my favorite parts of the game.
Apparently, Lady Dimitrescu is also a lesbian.
Really?
Per this article from Pink News in 2023.
Huh.
Look at that.
Cool. And also apparently some representation as well. It's a villain, but we'll take it.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Responding to a feature from Pink News highlighting 9 lesbians in gaming who changed the industry for Lesbian Visibility Week, Anthony Johnston, Village's scriptwriter, confirmed that Lady Dimitrescu is gay.
Huh. Interesting. That's kind of cool.
So first female villain type thing in Resident Evil, and first gay.
Well, very specifically, like that type of villain.
Right.
Because the game series has had other female villains. Yeah. But that's why I love Lady Dimitrescu. All right. You're all fine now.
You can put your boners away.
I wasn't going to just say it out loud, but okay, I guess we're just there. It's fine. Oh, what's next on your list?
We're not monetized.
That's true. That's true. What's next on your list?
Can you get demonetized for saying boner? I don't know.
YouTube's weird now.
Next on my list, I kind of talked about him already, so I might just skip to the next one. But let me touch here. Bowser.
Yeah.
Obviously, Bowser from the Mario suite of games. Iconic villain, just because, I mean, if for nothing else, the perseverance of that Koopa, you know.
I don't think we're supposed to be highlighting the things that, like, make them, like...
This is a celebratory episode about our villains, Jordan. We gotta celebrate Bowser's resiliency in the face of adversity.
Constantly trying to kidnap the same woman over and over again is
and he never stops.
Dude, you're saying it in a tone that isn't okay.
All jokes aside, Bowser's an iconic villain for obvious reasons. Every time he shows up, it's sort of like, okay, how badly can he mess this up, you know? And the way he makes you feel, kind of going back to like what I was talking about how villains make you feel, the way he makes you feel is kind of always just like eye-rolly, you know?
Yeah,
it's
a little bit.
Okay,
yeah,
sure, Bowser's gonna get us steal the princess. You know, it's just like, sure, you know?
He's also, I think, like, to me it's interesting, too, because he's the character that kind of sets the tone for the world as well. Because, like, everything sort of, like, spawns from Bowser in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
in a way, yeah.
Mario is a plumber. Like, he's sort of like, if you really think about it, he's a little out of depth in the world that he's kind of been supplanted into there.
Yeah.
But, like, everything from Bowser on kind of, like, tracks and makes sense, from the other Koopas to even the Goombas that go out of that. Like, it all kind of, like, goes... To me, it's like the tone kind of goes from him, which is interesting. Because normally the world kind of like goes from your hero and kind of like reflects out.
Mario in the Mario universe is sort of like the straight man, you know? It's just like, he's just a guy.
Yeah.
And everything else is crazy around him.
Yeah, truly.
So anyways, that's Bowser. We know him, we love him.
Yeah.
Moving on, Hades. From Hades.
Yes.
Yeah. So...
I feel like it's another one. Put your boners away. Yeah. I feel like anytime we talk about Hades, the whole queer community is just like,
frothing
like
at the mouth. Yep. Yeah. So Hades. So Hades spends most of the game not really being much of a villain.
Yeah.
Zagreus, the MC, is like very much against him and trying to break out of his domain and like away from his control and all of that. And Hades is very staunchly posed against him. But Hades doesn't lift a finger through most of the game. Doesn't do a thing.
He's really just like a really... I don't mean to do this in a diminishing way. He's just a really bad dad.
Well...
Do you know what I mean? Like, he's... But I mean just truly, like, in the real world, an awful father in the sense of, like, what you're doing is stupid and wrong. I'm not going to do anything about it, though. Like, it's just like...
Exactly. Well, I mean, in some regards, Zagreus is a grown-ass man and can do whatever he wants. And Hades is like, try. Like, see what happens. You know, like, try and break out of the underworld. Sure. You know? But yeah, so for most of the game, until you get to literally the very end, Hades does nothing to stop you. He doesn't yell at you or scream or fight you or nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. He is a kickback, relaxed villain. And then right at the very end, right before Zag would actually get out of the underworld, that's when he shows up and is like, okay, I'm here to fuck your shit up.
Yeah.
Like, so, again, another iconic entrance, I think, for a villain. Even though we had seen him before, like, seeing him enter as this form of, like, I'm the final boss and I'm here to stop you.
Yeah.
So iconic, and he wrecks your shit.
Yeah. Well, again, to me, it does harken back to, and again, I didn't mean it in a bad way, but, like, to me, it does harken back to, like, that fatherly figure kind of thing, where it's like, I don't know if you had this experience growing up or not, but I know other people can kind of relate to this, just like, you know, it's that thing of just like everything's cool and fine until dad gets out of his chair.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like
very bad.
It's just like, oh, now he's mad. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I really pissed dad off today. I need to do something. Like,
yeah.
I think it's that kind of vibe for it too, but like in a heightened sense, because it's like, well, this is the king of the underworld.
Yeah, that's kind of true. In a way, the game sets up kind of this like status quo of like Hades isn't gonna get up to deal with you, and you're like kind of accustomed to that when he does show up, you're like, oh shit, it's real now. Like like
because it kind of makes you feel
pressure through the roof.
It makes you just like, well, at least I don't have to worry about that. It's like, oh, now I do. Okay.
Yeah. So Hades from Hades, and just a little shout out. I am so excited for Hades too.
It looks so damn good.
So ready.
It looks so good. I'm also very excited. One of these days, I will make myself just spend a couple of days and I will get through fucking Hades.
Yeah, I know. I need to too.
Yeah, it's just that style of gameplay, man. I just like, it's
Roguelites.
great. It's so, the roguelite thing of just like starting over. It's just
it's a little bogged down.
I got stuff to do.
Getting thrown back to the beginning after getting through so much.
Yeah, it's that part of it that's really, really rough. Yeah. Like, I'm fine with some progress lost, but that ultimately, I'm just like, I get frustrated and I quit. Awesome though, love that.
Back over to you. Who's next?
I think truly another like more modern. Sort of, I love how we kind of ended up like, I mean, like past this on your list, it's a little bit more modern here, but like we kind of ended up a little bit just kind of going like old school, new school, old school, new school, like in a certain sense here. My next one is another pretty fucking iconic one. Andrew Ryan from the first BioShock game.
I mean, just
the fact that somebody sat down and was just like, I want evil Walt Disney. So, like truly evil
Walt Disney.
No, I mean, okay. Walt Disney as we know him as adults. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
There's some problematic stuff about Walt Disney, guys. Sorry. Like, it's just fucking true.
We bet new.
You know what I found out is where the Disney point comes from? Is because they had to edit out all of his cigarettes because he was a chain smoker. So,
is that
so all these photos of Walt Disney like this, it's because they would like go in and like erase out him like smoking cigarettes.
Kidding.
Allegedly. This is all rumor and speculation, but like supposedly that was
crazy.
it. Yeah.
I mean, everybody knew that Walt was smoking like
everybody fucking knew
all the time.
All the damn time. Yeah.
He had to smell like an ashtray.
For sure. That had to be just at the time actually probably didn't matter because all adults probably smelled like cigarettes at the time. But like so yeah, I was about to be like, must be disappointing to meet Walt Disney and be like, you smell like an ashtray. But it's like that was probably just normal for adults back in the day.
Yeah.
But so sort of like overall like just like to sort of like cap in like what Andrew Ryan was in the first BioShock game. He was this rich entrepreneur in the 1920s, I believe. Yeah, it was definitely it was
1910s, 20s, something around there.
No, because BioShock Infinite happens like during the 1910s because it's during that. I believe
that was like,
so.
I thought that was like the 1930s.
No, if I remember right, it's like the game starts in 1912 in BioShock Infinite.
I'll look it up.
Please look it up. But anyway, Andrew Ryan was this huge entrepreneur who just like. Apropos of like nothing realistic, just says I want to establish my own underwater city because I don't like the rules on the surface. It's too bogged down. Nobody likes real capitalism. Blah 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 blah. I'm gonna create my own underwater city, and I'm just gonna run everything that way that Ayn Rand would. And it just kind of goes to shit from there because it turns out no regulations means that there's no one to kind of like stop anybody from doing anything super fucking heinous. And it's just like, it's so interesting too because he is sort of like just always, another one too where it's like, you don't really meet him until not even like the end of the game, but like sort of like what you think is going to be the end of the game, which is a really fun part of it too. But he's always just sort of like in the background, like sort of like pulling the strings and stuff like that and just like communicating through messages. I for me, cemented in my brain is you go down into Rapture in the game, you have the introduction from him where it's him just going like, I'm Andrew Ryan and blah, 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 and here's why I made Rapture. And it's all like kind of inspiring and whatnot. Then you get into Rapture and see like how decrepit it's actually become. And then you go from the first part of the level into the second area, and you have that moment where he communicates with you again. And the first time, it's all like, anytime he shows up on a screen, it's like, anytime you talk to anybody in the game, like through a radio, they just like an image of them shows up on a screen, and that's all you see. Mm-hmm. There's no like animation to it and whatnot. You talk to him in the bathyspheres are going down. It's him kind of just like casually sitting in like a leather chair. just like talking to you very casually, very Orson Welles-esque, I would say. But then the image you get the second time, he's like kind of like looking down almost in sort of like a very like kind of clockwork orangey, very just like that style of like Kubrick kind of like stare down, but his hat's covering his eyes. And he just like starts talking about just like, so who sent you? Was it the KGB, the American government, blah, 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 blah. He's just like, well, either way, you're about to fucking die. And you're just kind of like, what? That's just like,
yeah.
Like, because I think that if the feeling I remember first time playing it was an expectation of like meeting this guy and him being like, oh, thank God you're here. Everything's gone to hell.
Yeah.
But he's just kind of acting like business as usual. This is, just how things are now, I guess. And not like, doesn't seem surprised by the fact that he has a bunch of people running around just like killing each other, addicted to this thing that he's created called Adam that gives everyone superpowers, fucking basically. Just absolutely fantastic, iconic villain.
Yeah.
And to me too, it's also like everything, again, kind of going back to what I was talking about with Metal Gear Solid a little bit, that sort of like interesting take on the meta narrative. I mean, we could also talk about Atlas all day, which we have in our Bioshock episode. Go back and listen to that. That way of just like, you have that character that is like sort of the tutorial character, and the game kind of going like, well, what if the tutorial character who you've trusted this whole time ends up being the real villain of the story? Spoiler, sorry. Game's however fucking many years old at this point. But also, there's an expectation to meeting the villain of the game and there being a fight. That's not what happens when you run into Andrew Ryan. Very, very big, I'm making the joke, but very big spoiler territory here. When you actually physically meet Andrew Ryan in the game, it's more of a revelation of what your character is doing in Rapture in the game itself, and sort of like laying out for you in a great monologue. Number one, just like the writing on that moment is so freaking good, but just sort of explaining to you just like, you were predestined to come here. You were made by this. It was sort of like in the design. Your destiny has already been written and foretold. I knew you were coming here. I knew you were going to be here. I'm going to explain all this to you, and then I'm going to make you kill me just to prove a fucking point. It's just like such an interesting, wild moment in the game that just like, after it's done and it gets back into the action of it, and you're just I remember having a moment where I was just like, I had a 30-second pause. And you're just like, can I just not? I don't like this right now. I feel weird. This is I myself as Jordan playing this game am uncomfortable in this moment. I don't want to keep playing right now. And that sounds weird, but I mean that in the best fucking way possible. Of just like, yeah, just iconic and great. Do we have a timeline yet?
Yes. Okay. So we're actually both wrong.
Oh, crap. Well,
A little bit. Okay. So it's later than we think, which is informative because based on the years in this, it's clear that Andrew Ryan was trying to do a thing with Rapture because all of the Art Deco style is very indicative of like that 1920s kind of vibe, yes. Which was like the last time before like the biggest world war.
Yeah.
So go with me. So, let me find it again.
Got you.
So in 1945, Andrew Ryan announces the plans for the construction of Rapture. In 1946, the infrastructure is built up enough that people can actually move in, and it's like a large population. So there's an influx of people into the city of Rapture in 1946. Hold on, 1960, at an undefined date, the events of Bioshock occur.
Okay. Yeah.
And after that, but in the same year, Elizabeth brings Booker DeWitt and Songbird to Rapture. Yes. So there's overlap.
Yeah, there's a little bit of overlap there. Yeah.
But it's much later than we thought.
God.
I thought it was older because of all of the Art Deco 1920s inspired.
Which is when Rapture would have actually been established, and that's why everything looks that way. But
no, it's not when it was established. It was 1946.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, 1946 is when people actually start moving in. So
yeah,
but it's all a reaction to the end of World War II, basically.
Yes, that's right.
So it makes sense that Andrew Ryan would be like, well, let's go back to like this time, kind of before the Great Depression and then the World Wars that occur. So
it does make sense. Okay. Gotcha.
Or actually, World War I was 1914?
Yeah, World War I was... No, it was the 20s, wasn't it?
This is where you all find out that
we
suck at
history and dates.
Oh my god, I called it 1914.
Oh, you were right. No, you were right.
Never mind, I don't suck at history. I'm actually awesome.
Started in 1914 and ended in the 20s. Yeah. Okay, got it.
Ended in the 20s. So Andrew Ryan was trying to like go back to like that roaring 20s, like everything is great, the economy's great, like all of this, like let's go back to that.
Yeah.
He's trying to capture that in the 40s when Rapture's being established.
Yes. Okay.
So there you go.
Got it. Anyway, all that to say, Andrew Ryan is a great villain in video games.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of nailed that discussion.
Let's go to your next one because I'm assuming I feel very similarly about this guy as well.
I mean, I would be surprised if he didn't. It's the Elusive Man from the Mass Effect series. He shows up in 2. He is the big baddie, the guy that's in charge of Cerberus, which you are aligned with in Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like your boss. He's kind of like the one calling the shots, telling you what to do. And he is at some, undisclosed location. He only ever talks to you through this very specific communication channel that only you two can access. It's like impossible to impenetrate any other way. And he's like this shady guy and it's like maybe a cyborg or something. It's like very vague. He's like very mysterious. He is the Elusive Man.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he's so iconic is because the way he makes you feel is completely unsure. Like, you never are sure. Even when you're aligned with him, it's always very like, is this guy trustworthy? Is he a good guy? Like,
particularly through Mass Effect 2, there's always a feel, every time you talk to him, there's a feeling of unease because you're always just kind of like, you're holding something back from me, like intentionally.
Yeah.
You're holding some information from me that would make this a whole lot easier, and I don't know why you wouldn't just tell me. Like, the whole game kind of has that feel with him. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's always like, I'm only being told just enough to enact your whim, but it feels like you are just a pawn in his plan.
Yes, 100%.
Very much.
Which is frustrating as a player because you're just gonna like, no, I move the plot forward.
Right.
You don't fucking tell me what to do.
Especially playing fucking Commander Shepard.
Yeah, especially as Commander Shepard. Yeah.
So, like, the way that the Elusive Man makes me feel is always like, what the fuck are you about? What's going on? And he has just that air of mystery about him. Until 3, where he, like, is very staunchly opposed to the greater good that Shepard is fighting for.
Yeah, that Shepard's going for. Yeah. And just like, it's a really fun thing to kind of like spend the time in 2, sort of having the waffling back and forth of like, this person may have gone about things wrong, but maybe they do sort of have good intentions, and like if you kind of like go down the track of like the oh my god, Paragon Renegade, the Renegade route. Good Lord.
You had an identity crisis.
Because I was like, how am I forgetting the 2 factors of the morality of Mass Effect? But like, if you get on the Renegade path a bit more, I feel like you come down at the end of it and kind of go like, okay, maybe some of the methods have been a bit extreme here, but there is sort of like an idea of like for the greater good from this guy. And then I think, but if you go down the Paragon route, you understand that it's like, it is beyond even just like being like more focused on like what's best for humans. It becomes what's best for Cerberus and what's best for the Elusive Man himself. Sort of like, I feel like it was kind of like touching on a little bit of commentary on like, like don't trust the fucking ultra rich back in the day a little bit. Going back now, it feels a little Elon Musk coded.
Ooh,
do you know what I mean?
So right.
And I don't know if that was couldn't tell you if he was like even in like the overall like zeitgeist at the time, but it kind of has that feel to it a little bit of like this dude who's he's also kind of the dude who like takes a lot of credit for shit that he really didn't have anything to fucking do with. You know what I mean?
It's sort of the Lex Luthor type. It's like very that.
It very probably
what I mean?
Probably started with that as like the template and stuff.
That like ultra rich, just whatever the fuck they want, and it's just totally misguided as fuck. It's like it's like the Lex Luthor archetype of villain, and I don't think that it's Elon Musk coded as much as Elon Musk is Lex Luthor coded.
Yes. Probably more accurate.
Unfortunately.
Oh, that's terrifying. Anyway. Just keep drinking.
Well, I'll move us along. Yeah, the elusive man. That's my next entry. Back to you.
Brilliant. Well, because it leads into the point I just want to say very quickly. Also, another amazing performance by the actor Martin Sheen.
Oh,
absolutely, he's older actor. He was on The West Wing from back in the day and whatnot. Fucking absolutely fantastic. I love him so much.
Oh, Martin Sheen. You said Martin Sheen,
and you thought Michael Sheen?
No, I heard Martin Short. I was like, that's not Martin.
It's not Martin Short at all.
It's not Martin
if you
Short.
said that, you would have been correct.
I was like, in my head, I was like, there's no fucking way that is
That would have been a trip,
Short.
wouldn't it? That would have been a fucking trip.
Anyways.
But just like to use it as a segue into just like talking about great performances in voice acting and also just an absolute icon in the video game world. Look no further than Gladys in the Portal series. You just recently played the Portal games, right?
Yeah, that's long ago.
Yeah, a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just like equal parts terrifying, but also kind of fucking hilarious at the same time.
Fucking funny.
Like, truly is the person that establishes the tone for the game of what you. It is, to me, one of the best examples of like dark comedy because everything is so fucked up about what she does.
Yeah.
But you can't help but laugh and just like different points. Like, my example will always be in the reveal in Portal 2 when you find out about like what that other like the other like AI ball thing that you've been helping out throughout the game turns kind of like there's a little bit of a twist there where like they're also a villain of the game as well. And you're falling down a hole with Gladys that has now been implanted into a potato, which is just so fucking good.
Yeah.
And she's telling you just like, oh yeah, she's just like, by the way, that thing that you just helped out this whole time, it was created to help dumb me down, to try to keep me from doing what I did. And you just made that guy in charge of the whole facility. Way to go. And then you hear this very mechanical clapping sound, and she just goes, oh good, the clap function still works. It's just like, it's so fucking good. And it's just like the performance is like this robotic, like very sort of like old school, like chat function on your laptop feel. It all sounds very like mechanical in that sense. But I know this because I played through the first Portal game with these options where you could like have these little things you could go to where it would have like commentary from the developers or from like the voice actors in the game, particularly from Gladys. And she was talking and she talks about being in the recording booth and having to like do things where it's like, it's not just going like and talking in like a robot voice. It's thinking about the fact that it's like, well, the idea is that all this stuff has already kind of like been pre-recorded. So as you're going through it, you've got to think of like, okay, when I say this time, I'm trying to say it the same way I said it the first time I ever said it when we did the recording.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because it's like a database of all the words, and then to make a sentence, it's like pulling those words and
is the idea, but it's just a person doing the performance for it. So it still adds like an actual like a real human element to it, so it feels more alive. But yeah, she's just fucking. I mean, like I'm putting a gender on it, but like they're just fucking great.
Yeah, absolutely
fantastic.
That is incredible, and some of the best, funniest lines delivered from that. I pulled up. I knew that there was like one in particular that line that I was like looking for. I couldn't remember it exactly, so I had to look it up. But my favorite line is, "Here come the test results. You are a horrible person. We weren't even testing for that." Like, are you kidding?
That's right.
That's so funny.
That's all that stuff. Yeah, I was just like, did you know that random noises can cause major stress? Can cause high levels of stress, and just like a train going by all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But also, like, we talk about how funny she is, but when you first, like, end up reactivating her in Portal 2, there is still a feeling of, like, fuck, this is about to get bad. Like, she is still, like, kind of genuinely menacing and terrifying as well. And just, like, all the credit to the writing team on that one, and the voice actress as well. Just, like, being able to, like, ride that balance of making a villain both hilarious but also genuinely terrifying. Such a hard line to walk, and it's so incredibly fucking well done.
There's something to be said for just the situation adding to the humor too, because like an all powerful facility running computer program basically talking down to you is so funny. It's just so funny. I mean, like, some of the lines are just so fucking good. I'm reading through these and I'm like, oh my god, that's right. She said all of that fucking wild stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's also like the mechanic of it, especially in 2 when she shows up and it's like, she could just kill you and enact revenge. She has that ability. No, she's going to still make you to run through a bunch of tests while she openly mocks you at the beginning of
It's the mocking. That's what it is. Because it's like,
openly mocking.
You're a computer program and you're mocking her.
Why is that
the
a function?
main character? Why
is that a function you have to be able to just like insult and like such deep cuts too?
Yeah.
Like such harsh, brutal, deep cuts.
I think at one time she says something along the lines of, "Congratulations on defying the odds. You managed to pack on a few pounds," or something like that. And it's like, fucking Christ!
Stuff you're like, Jesus, what the hell? And then you're like, what did I do? Oh yeah, I tried to kill you.
True.
That did it.
True.
That did in fact happen. But granted, she tried to kill you first.
Yeah.
She did in fact try to kill you first.
Yeah.
But yeah, and just like Gladys is one, and it's also one of the ones where I'm just like, if you haven't played the Portal games, go play them. They're
go play them.
Has
so good.
Still some of the best games. Still some of the best games.
Yeah,
I love the Portal
absolutely.
games so much. All right, moving on down the line. I don't know who this
I didn't think you would.
is.
I didn't think you would. But once I explain, you'll be like, oh yeah, I get it. Giovanni is the name of the gentleman who owns and operates Team Rocket in the Pokemon universe. Now you know exactly
yes,
what I'm
now I know exactly who it is. Yeah. Okay.
Just an iconic villain. Kind of like the first big bad guy of the Pokemon universe. There's been a slew of them over the years, but Giovanni is like the first. And Giovanni was really cool because, especially in like the anime, if you watch the anime and accompanying the games, he was posed as like this kind of foil, or maybe his team was the foil, because Team Rocket, Jesse, James, and Meowth, who are like constantly antagonizing Ash and the gang, are kind of doofuses and kind of bumbling idiots. Giovanni, on the opposite of that, is like the very assured, like old school Bond villain. Literally has a cat basically like in his lap. That kind of Bond villain, you know. He has a Persian, which is a cat Pokemon.
Yes.
He is the 8th gym leader in the series. So he's like part of the Pokemon League and supposed to be this like well-respected Pokemon trainer. But he's also a bad guy because he's really Team Rocket on the side, and he's responsible for the developing of Mewtwo, which is the events of the first movie. It's a whole thing. Anyways, he's iconic because he is the big bad guy. He's dark. He's a Bond villain in the Pokemon games, and it's so starkly different from everything you see before, because Pokemon is light and fun and silly and jokey and bright colors, and he is dark, brooding, evil guy. You know, so that's why he sticks out for me. And you even know like who he is. You can probably envision him, right?
Oh, I have the image of him when I first played like Red and Blue back in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And seeing him and just being like, oh, I don't like this guy.
Yeah. And he had like big bad Pokemon that you hadn't seen before. So kind of, again, that kind of air of like mystery almost. Another Lex Luthor villain, actually. Come to think about it.
Very Lex Luthor,
Yeah.
In terms of just being able to like, I can just buy whatever I want. And so like it's very also like early days, just like don't trust rich people coded as well, in terms of just like he just like has this like respectability within the world of Pokemon, but like he really just kind of bought his way into it when you kind of like arguably break it down.
Maybe.
Because part of the plot in the anime as well is that he's the one that picks up Mewtwo, right? He didn't create Mewtwo, but he picks up Mewtwo.
Yeah.
And starts using him.
It's been a long time since I've seen the first movie, so I'm kind of trying to remember the events. I don't know if Giovanni like commissioned the science team to create Mewtwo.
That feels wrong.
He's like part of it.
Yeah, because I remember Mewtwo breaking out of the lab.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. He breaks out and then Mewtwo does his own thing. Absolutely. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure that Mewtwo was a Team Rocket asset that went rogue.
Okay, got it. Copy. That would make sense.
Pretty sure that's the case. I don't know. Fact check me in the comments.
But yeah. That's pretty good.
That's Giovanni. Back to you. I don't know this game and these people at all. So enlighten me.
So this is sort of a broad one, because I was thinking about it. I was just like, I do want to talk about Dead Space in this because it's one of my favorite game series. Probably the most time I put into a game outside of Mass Effect. This in terms of like time played in them. But like, there's the overarching sort of like narrative villain of the Necromorphs, which is sort of like their version of like over the top like space zombies. Like take zombies and the creature from The Thing and kind of like meld them into one thing, and it's like that basically.
Gross.
It's like, but that more takes the route of like something like a Walking Dead, where it's like that's more treated like a plague or an infestation than it is like a much more intense version, but like more than it is just like, oh, this is the villain of the story. Like the games still have their own villains. So I was like, I can kind of compact it down into two entities that are always present throughout the game, which is the made up religion in the game of Unitology, and then just the government itself that is always like trying to either cover up the events of what's happening in Dead Space or trying to utilize the things that are discovered in the world of Dead Space for their own advantage. So
very alien.
Very. Oh, they make
alien.
The developers make no bones about that. Like, they are heavily inspired by the Alien series, Alien, The Thing. And I think there's something else mixed in there too. But like, yeah, it's very heavily inspired by Alien, and anyone kidding otherwise.
I recently watched the first 4 Alien movies.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Are you proud of me? I watched the movie.
I am very proud of you.
And then I made a reference to it.
Oh my god. Let's talk about it a little bit after we're done with the podcast, because those are some of my favorite movies. But yeah, there's a really fun, interesting thing where it kind of like takes a cool stance, where I think it's a cool stance where it sort of says like, yeah, this extremist religious group are bad, but also this government entity that is trying to cover up what they're doing is they're sort of in league with them, but also kind of like pretending that they're not, but then also going into like, but we can use the things that they discover for our own advantages and whatnot. It's a whole thing in Mass Effect 2 where the government creates there's a thing called the marker, which is what activates all of the weird necromorph creatures in the games. They make their own because they're like, well, this thing has so much power and utility to it that basically, if we want to, we could like drop this thing on like a nation or a planet that we're at war with, activate this thing and basically kill everybody, but also create our own like version of like soldiers to fight against themselves, basically. Yeah, gross, icky, disgusting. But the religious side of Unitology believes that even though that like we just don't understand this next level of evolution. It's such a scope beyond us that we don't get that these necromorphs that we think are so gross, they're the next level that we are trying to achieve and get to, and this is actually a good thing, and we need to spread this throughout the galaxy and find more markers and get this thing going, get the ball rolling and whatnot. Sort of like, it's a great narrative in terms of like falling into a power structure and like wanting to like keep control, but also sort of like the cult-like mentality of like never realizing that you signed up for the wrong thing and continuously just like finding it's also kind of listen to the whole like, the conspiracy theorist thing of just like the problem with arguing with a conspiracy theorist is that there's always further down the rabbit hole that you could just go. You know what I mean? And you can always just be like, well, it's because the government doesn't want you to know about this. Whereas it's kind of fun and nuanced because it doesn't ignore the fact that the government will cover shit up sometimes just to like keep us in the fucking dark. But also it doesn't ignore that it's just like, no, but these people are also fucking crazy. And are creating their own reality in which that everything can be justified. Every single moment of this thing can be justified and made to feel like it's the right and good thing to do. Like all the way down the line, even while people are dying around them.
Right.
It's, yeah.
Yeah,
deeply fun, deeply engaging game. I would hate to cut you off. I would just like to say we do need to do some editing, but we are running at just past an hour here.
Yeah.
So if you're okay with it, I'm done with my list. If you want to do one more off of yours,
I was gonna say one more. Yeah.
Cool.
So I will just keep it in the space theme and talk about my last one, which is Sarah Kerrigan from the StarCraft series.
I'm excited about this because I know little to nothing about StarCraft.
Okay, so
I'm excited to hear about this.
Okay, well, if Lady Dimitrescu is to Resident Evil, then Sarah Kerrigan is to StarCraft. She's Mother. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't a good metaphor. That wasn't or simile, whatever I was saying.
No, I get it.
So hold on. Let me just find a little image. So Sarah Kerrigan was a human. She was. Hold on. Let's get a little before here. So this is before Sarah Kerrigan.
Okay, gotcha.
She was a Terran, so from Earth, a human.
Yeah. Normal redhead lady.
Right. Who was trained as a ghost, because ghosts, like, show telepathic powers. And she was, like, very promising, so she was put through the ghost program. So she was a ghost, is, like, her unit. She had a lot of telepathic abilities. She, in the events of StarCraft 1, gets abducted by the Zerg, which is the alien race that you are fighting as the Terrans. So when you play through the Terran campaign in StarCraft 1, you are, for a lot of the missions, protecting this thing called the Chrysalis. And it's this thing that is, like, gestating and growing, and you don't really know what it's about, but it's, like, you're directed from your Zerg overlords are, like, telling you gotta protect the Chrysalis at all costs. Like, the Zerg overmind is telling you this. So it's big important, right? After the events of the first campaign in StarCraft, the Chrysalis hatches, and it's Sarah Kerrigan, who has been, like, mutated and is now half Zerg and is, like, the queen of the Zerg now.
Interesting.
And so she, like, goes back to fight the Terrans and anybody who would defy her, and becomes what is known as the Queen of Blades of the Zerg. And so this is, like, her all transformed.
She still looks so cool, though.
Oh,
like,
no,
that's
she is cool. And she is mother, and I'm sure that people would like her to step on that.
No, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. But she is, like, not fully human anymore, and her telepathic abilities are what give her the ability to, like, communicate with Zerg and, like, wield them as combatants, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love a good twist, especially in sci-fi, where it's just like, hey, guess what? Turns out it was kind of you the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no, it was another human, as it turns out, is the big baddie you have to come after.
Love
that.
Yeah, I'm glossing over and simplifying a lot of things. There's a lot of details that go into it.
Oh, for sure.
But, like, that is kind of her origin, is she was abducted by the Zerg and then transformed into their queen, basically. Okay. And then she laid waste to a big Terran city with a fleet, an army, an absolute unit of Zergs. Yeah.
This sounds like it's 1-2, and it's where it's like, for me, what's like with sci-fi and fantasy are sort of like different sides of the same coin in a way, where it's like, obviously there's like a presence and like a reality to this character that's scary, but it also feels very like kind of like Saruman or Sauron as well, where it's sort of also like the lore to it is also what makes them kind of like an impactful villain as well. It's like all the stuff that goes into it, like, it's what makes them an interesting villain too.
Yeah. It's, for me, it's sort of like, I liken it sort of to like the Medusa story. So you're familiar with Medusa?
Yes.
As like a monster of Greek mythology.
Yes.
Right? So there's a more modern take.
There is also, I do also know the
more modern take, which is like this woman was wronged because she was R-worded.
Yeah.
And older stories will say, as punishment for her getting R-worded, she was transformed into the monster Medusa as we know it before, as we know it now.
Yeah.
But like the more modern take is like, no, she was made into that monster so that no man could ever do that to her again.
Yeah.
Which is like, I kind of like that take a lot. Way fucking more.
Way better fucking take.
And so I kind of liken this to that, because like Kerrigan was wronged. She was like abandoned by the humans. She was like kind of used as like a decoy almost.
Yeah.
And she was allowed to be overrun by the Zerg. And the humans above her were like consciously making that decision, because the Zerg were already attracted to her because of her telepathic abilities. It was a whole thing. So she was kind of like made to like go wander out, like, oh yeah, like go, this is your mission. And then she like kind of drew the Zerg to her, and then the humans abandoned her, and she was like, the fuck? And then when she got mutated and transformed into what she is now, that's when she was like, okay, revenge time, you know?
I really love, like, there's something very satisfying about a villain that you just, like, you're meant to hate. There's something very interesting to the villain, like very Killmonger from Black Panther-esque, where you're like, I get it, but man, like, like, you're not wrong for being mad. You're completely justified. However, certain events that are in place now, I can't just let you do what you're going to do, unfortunately. That's super interesting and cool.
And it's weird, too, because she is a villain from one perspective, but you also play in StarCraft 2 as Kerrigan.
Really?
Well, and in StarCraft 1, the Brood War expansion, you play as Kerrigan, too.
That's kind of cool.
So you're like, it's like on one side of the coin villain, but on the other side, you're playing as her, and she's the protagonist. So it's like...
That's so interesting and cool. Love that. Well, that makes it very, like, Arcane-esque, in a sense, where it's like you get the full perspective and you're like, okay, well, really, who's the bad guy here? Like, that's cool. I love that.
So, so that's our roundup of villains.
I just want to say, to kind of, like, have a little bit of a button to this, is that what I love is that we have really run a full gambit here in terms of like different tones and feels and ideas coming from things. It's like talking about Kerrigan, of somebody who was just like sort of a sympathetic villain, people like the Elusive Man and Andrew Ryan, who like no sympathy to them at all, to the truly like overall supernatural like Lady Demetresque, to the goofy with like Bowser. It's like, I just love that it's such a, to me, I love that this is kind of given like a palette of like just sort of like a taster test of like, hey, here's sort of like the full range of what you can get if you play video games. And I just love that there's such a scope to pull from. It's one of my favorite things.
Absolutely. And like I was saying, I think that what makes these villains so iconic is like how they make you feel.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Like there is a very distinct feeling associated with each of these, I think.
100%. I love that.
Yeah. So that's our roundup of villains.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We also want to know what makes a great villain to you, and are there any villains in video games that you think that we should have added to our list or should have been here at all? Let us know in the comments.
As always, if you have any ideas for future discussions on our show, you can send us an email at 3vopodcastteam@gmail.com, and you can give us your ideas. You can also find us and follow us everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the social medias. We are at 3vopodcast everywhere. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. It really makes a difference, and we'll see you next time. Bye.